Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be going over Martin Heidegger's work, and specifically, what is being for Martin Heidegger? So if we want to give an introduction to Heidegger, we should begin with being, as that's what we're doing. Being for Heidegger is a capital B. When we think of being for Heidegger, we're going to think of a capital B, and it's going to be singular, right? Because being is the gatheredness of beings. Gatheredness means that which all beings take part in. So you have the idea of chairs, tables, computers, anything in the world, bugs. All these are beings which take part in that fundamental being. Again, being is the gatheredness of all these beings. Now, precisely, what is this gatheredness? When we say gatheredness, we're speaking very abstractly, but we're going to have to continue with this for right now. Heidegger goes back to the ancient philosopher Heraclitus, and he speaks about how being is physis in ancient Greek. Physis is emergence. Being is emergence because when you encounter something new in the world, it's like an emergence. It's like this emerging sway that you encounter. So each being you encounter in the world, this time we have speaking being in a lowercase setting, as just like the chair, the table. We're not speaking about the fundamental like existence itself of such, which would again, the existence itself of such is the capital B. So we're speaking about like beings in the world, again lowercase b, chairs, tables, and all that. When we encounter one of these, it is an emergence. It emerges into our perspective, right? Further, what this emergence is, this perspective we have of being, this is what Heidegger calls the seeming or Dasein. Dasein, or the seeming, is basically just how being appears to us based on our position towards it and our perspective of it. So, the seeming is always a disguise in Heidegger's work. A couple examples that I believe that he gives that are the best ones are the stick in the water that appears bent when it is in the water. So you put a straight stick in the water, anyone can do this, right? You put a straight stick in the water, but when you look at it in the water, it appears bent, but it's not really bent, right? So this would be a seeming. It seems to be bent, but that is not the truth of the nature of its being, right? It is a straight stick, it's not bent. So this would be a seeming, a disguise, right? So that's how Heidegger conceives of seeming and its relation to being. We've already said being is the gatheredness of beings. Now we can go into sort of what is the human being in Heidegger, because the human takes a very, very important distinction in Heidegger. So Heidegger conceives of humans as Dasein. Dasein basically means the openness of beings. It's German, but we leave it untranslated when we write it. But Dasein, what the best explanation that Heidegger gives to like really give a precise meaning is that for who their existence is an issue. So when we say that for who their existence is an issue, what do we mean by that? Do we mean someone doesn't like existing? Do we mean someone hates the world? No, of course not. That is nihilism, and Heidegger is against nihilism. The person whose existence is an issue is Dasein, because the person whose existence is an issue, they question the fundamental existence of things in the world. As Heidegger says, they reach the fundamental question of metaphysics, which is, why are there beings instead of nothing? Why are there beings instead of nothing? That is the question that Dasein reaches in the world. But Heidegger makes it very clear that not all people are Dasein. He says a lot of people live in capriciousness. They live with their mere seemings. They don't really uncover the nature of being. Again, someone would walk by and a not Dasein would go, oh, the stick's in the water, it's bent. That must mean the stick's bent. No further questions are asked. There is no question about, is this a mere seeming? Is this really the nature of the being? There is no question about truth. It is just as it is given in the world. The present at hand is all that the not Dasein sees. Now, Dasein, those who are Dasein, Heidegger says that they question the mere seeming. Again, they would look at the stick in the water and go, well, the stick's not actually bent. It just looks that way. It's the seeming that it looks that way, right? So this is what Heidegger conceives of as the eidos, another ancient Greek word, which means the look, the visibility of something. So when we're in the world and we're encountering beings, our look towards the being does not really reveal the true nature of the being. Again, we've given the example of the stick in the water, but we can also do one of the sun rising and the sun setting. The sun does not really rise, quote unquote. It is just our perspective which shifts, which makes it seem that the sun is really rising, right? This would be a mere seeming. The sun is not rising. That is not the truth of the nature of its being. But our seeming in the world, our perspective and position towards it, makes it seem as if the sun is rising. So we've gone through a lot of basic Heidegger right there. I'm going to go a little bit more into the human and like the sign and like what this means for Heidegger. So we've already said that not everyone is the sign for Heidegger. And further, only humans can be the sign. Animals cannot. Heidegger excluded animals from the position of design because he says that animals are not caught up in these fundamental questions. Animals just take the present at hand and do not question. A dog would walk by, see the stick in the water that looks bent, and not think about it. No second thought. Stick's bent, that's that, right? And further, what Heidegger says is that when we think of people, we always think of them, this would be more associated with his idea of connection in the world, as he calls being in the world. That when we see people, we always think of them as some connection to the world. We always think of them as, oh, that's a father, that's a son, that's a construction worker, that's a restaurant worker. We give them to use Lacan's term, we put them in the symbolic order, right? We designate them with a symbolic identification, which we can use to draw them into the nature of the world, to bring them into the level of signifier, which just means we can refer to them as something in relation to other things. So that's what we do with people. But when we see a deer, we don't go, that deer is the son of another deer, and that deer is... No, of course not. What Heidegger says is that we just see a deer. A deer. There's no name. There's no name for this deer. It's just a deer. It's just a deer. It's just a they. It's just a they. There is no name. There is no design. There is no identifying feature. It's just a deer. We see a cow. We don't go, oh, that cow is related to this person, and that cow plays this position in the world. No. Heidegger says that we just say that's a cow. We designate the cow as what it is without any additional symbolic identifications, which is why animals cannot be design. They are excluded. Now, Heidegger's love interest for many years, Hannah Arendt. Well, what Hannah Arendt says is that when we designate a animal to be a pet, we then bring them into the level of design. We give them that symbolic identification and bring them into the level of the signifier. Before that, before the dog is a pet and has a name, it's just a dog, again. But humans all have names. When you see the construction worker, you may not know the name, but you know that the construction worker has a name that is identified. It has friends, it has family, it has connections, perhaps a love interest. All of these concepts are within the idea of seeing the construction worker. But with the animal, none of this comes to light. You just say, oh, it's a cow, it's a deer. Again, this is the they, or das Man in Heidegger. There is no symbolic identification. It's just the they, just like the other, just this amorphous thing which has no identification and has no connection with other beings in the world that we can perceive. So that's going to kind of do it for the video. I'm going to go over quickly some of the main points. We have being as the gatheredness of beings. Being is physis, it is emergence. We have beings as just like the chairs, the tables, etc., as that which takes part of being. It is under the manifold. It is in the manifold of what is under being, you can say. Manifold is just like a multiplicity. So it's in the multiplicity of what is under being. We have the sign. We have that for whom their existence is a problem. They reach the fundamental question of metaphysics, why are there beings instead of nothing? And we have the animal, the they, das Man, that who doesn't have any symbolic identifications, which is not a signifier, which has no ability to be signified, which when we think of it, we don't think the construction worker, we don't think the restaurant worker, we just think the deer, the cow. None of these terms mean anything to the actual symbolic identification for an animal. Again, it is just an animal. And finally, we have the seeming. The seeming is that the disguise of being, the stick in the water which appears bent, but it's not really bent. If I can give one last statement, what I was saying is that the position of Heidegger is that we should unconceal the seemings. We should pull the stick out of the water, following that analogy, and see that it's not bent, see that it's really a straight stick. We unconceal, or in the Greek word, aletheia. We derive an unconcealment, or aletheia, of such stick in the water, of the sun rising, and determine that that is not the truth of the nature of its being. It is just a seeming. So yeah, that's going to do it for the video. I've gone through a lot. I've given a good introduction to Heidegger, a lot of his various terms, and kind of given you some places for you to expound on your own and where other thinkers have built upon it. So anyways, go ahead and subscribe down below, like the video, and have a nice day.